All right, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. It's your host Shannon Latham, and I have with me today Aaron Wyke. I think I've got that right. Is that correct?
You nailed it, Shannon.
Man, I'll tell you what, I'm getting better all the time at this. So, Aaron, tell me a little bit about your business, the name of it, where you guys are located. Just kind of educate the audience for a bit, if you would.
You bet. So the name of my company is Leadferno, and we are a business messaging app that helps businesses communicate with their customers using text messaging and then direct messaging services like Facebook Messenger. Google, through their Google Business Profile, has a chat and messaging tool, which we've integrated into our tool as well. So at the end of the day, we're looking to help people communicate the way that we've seen so many of us go in our personal lives, more through texting and messaging with each other, and spin that over to the business side with some of the business nuances and make it a lot easier and more efficient inside of the business world to interact. And a simple way to put it, I tell people, is like, just kind of consider this the new email. That's the way the trend is going there. I'm located just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my partner is in California. We're one of those, what you would call a remote company. Our employees are kind of scattered all over North and South America. We're a small company. There's only about 8 of us, but the beautiful thing of our product is all web and technology based, so we can live and work where we need to and accomplish the things we need to while connected to the internet.
So, yeah, obviously very cool, very new, very, in terms of thought and how people do business. And especially in a post-COVID era, we're definitely seeing, just a drive in that direction that's going even deeper and farther. And I always like to say in the shed industry, we're sort of a conservative industry that doesn't necessarily adapt well. To be quite honest, Aaron, you're talking to a shed geek, but you're not talking to a tech geek. Even myself, I struggle through. But what I have found is that over time, the value, not just in technology, but I'm doing even some of the back end stuff on my website now, and I think really making like the user interface on most things user friendly is really the key. And I suspect that that's probably something you guys have found in your mission too already. Is I went to your website and already started getting some of the messaging to me, and I was like, oh, you know what, I should interact with this, but I just don't have time before we do this right now. And I was going to go back and forth to kind of see how it would operate, and I would encourage others to do so. But where does this idea come from? One thing we're big on the Shed Geek podcast is kind of telling your story. I suspect you didn't wake up one day and say, I want to do this, but life led you down this path. Is that right?
Oh man, it totally did. And boy, there's about 4 or 5 things you said in there, Shannon, that I could like riff on each and every one of those.
Let's go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah, totally. The one thing that I wanted to tell you industry wide that, so I actually think this is a blessing when you are not a bleeding edge industry, because the beauty of that is you can watch other industries embrace new trends and technologies, and you can see how they utilize it. You might even utilize it yourself as a customer. And so you don't have to be, on that leading curve and figuring it out and trying to figure out how it's going to work for you and how to use it. Your introduction might be, staying at a hotel, and so they are texting you from the front desk asking if your room is okay and everything's to your liking. And if you have any issues, this is a text concierge, and please text them back. You might use a service provider that is coming to your house that texts you a reminder when they're going to come to your house. Obviously, in healthcare for a number of years now, we've had that. And just as you hit upon, right, COVID really accelerated this because we lost a lot of foot traffic and human interaction options and things like that. And text messaging became a default to be able to accomplish those things and still have a direct line to our consumers. So I would tell you, I get really excited working with industries that are middle to even, bottom of the pack for adopting new technologies, because there's so much already out there that you can learn from. I just think it's ripe with opportunity. Now, the key is to be an early adopter and an early mover in your industry. That's when you can really make an impact. You jump ahead, you know things before the others, and you establish this reputation as being, you know, great customer experience, easy to work with, and go from there. And I think that probably segues well into like what you also said about the messaging and being easy to work with. Like at the end of the day, that's really what our tool is about. We want to make it as easy as possible for a customer to ask questions, get familiar with the product or get the details they need, build trust, and buy from you. And so how did I arrive at this? Now my next segue into that. So I grew up in a small business household. My dad owned a small market AM radio station. My mom owned a custom framing gallery. And I just like to always put it that my dinner table every night was like a board meeting, right? It was two small business owners talking about their days. Each of them had a different amount of employees and what was going on with that. And I really saw with my dad too, the value of community, because in having a small market radio station, like you really had to be ingrained and part of the community. So seeing all those things really led me to having an interest in communication and sales and marketing and even content in watching what was programmed on the radio, right? They weren't trying to play the top hits of today or things like that. It was local weather, agriculture reports, high school sports.
Yeah.
So I learned the value of like hitting the right content for the people you're in front of. And all these things fold into marketing really well. So late 90s, mid 90s, when I started getting out in the world after school, is I started my own entrepreneur journey. I started a small little travel agency for like sports trips. So I would package together like tickets to a football game or a basketball game, travel there, hotel, maybe something else while you're in that city, and I would sell those packages. And one of the ways in the late 90s that was coming available and somewhat cutting edge was to do that over the internet. So I went and picked up a book and learned how to build a website, which was just a one-page website at the time. A web page was sufficient enough in 1998.
Yeah.
And I built this one-page site to advertise my sports tours. So when I did a newspaper ad or another print ad or an event, I could tell people you can find out a lot more and get all the details by going to this web address and including that in my ad. And so I did that. And then my dad at the time was kind of like, oh, well, how do we get the radio station to have one of those? And then from there, it just kind of went on to, obviously, a lot of his friends and clients were small business owners. And they were like, how do we get a web page? And before I knew it, I was out of the sports tour business and I was in the web design business. And then from there, the next 15 years, we're really building hundreds of websites. I kind of moved my client list into a larger agency and went to work with them. They had some better technology and better redundancy and processes. And I just kind of stair-stepped through 3 or 4 different agencies of different sizes and growing those and evolving those. And of course, technology just, took off. And there's so much to get into around search engine optimization and mobile apps, social media, all of those things coming on the scene. And so it's just a constant cycle. The easy saying I always have is, I go to bed smart and I wake up stupid, because that's how fast things have evolved, right? So if you don't...
I feel that more than you know.
Yeah.
Man, all of this is definitely great. You really talked about, the first mover's advantage. That's just incredibly important. Being able to be the first in your industry to take that, because at some point, all ideas are kind of mimicked. I know in the shed industry, we certainly do that. To me, in a typical shed, you're not going to be able to maintain an advantage without a patent for very long. And even then, it's going to have an expiration date on it. But what you can really control and maintain that first mover's advantage for a long time is really the internal systems and processes that your company has. I mean, Chevy and Ford, Dodge, they all see what cars out there and they see what the market's wanting. And, Shed's much smaller, industry, maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 billion total. So you're talking about something that, as a first mover's advantage, your internal systems and processes in your corporate structure or even in your small businesses, that's really the key. So I really love that you touched on that, because I try to promote that heavily in the shed industry. When you have a first mover's advantage and you take care of your internal systems and processes, it's amazing at what levels it moves you up in, a period of 3 or 4 or 5 years. In sports, who did you follow? I'm just curious. So you're in Minnesota. So, I mean, like, what were you doing? Like Twins, Timberwolves? I mean,
more like Minnesota Vikings than anything else.
Okay.
Yep. So a lot of Vikings, some Twins and Timberwolves. This was kind of during the golf boom and early stages of Tiger Woods. So PGA events, and then NASCAR, right? NASCAR was really expanding and hitting full swing. So, took groups, to a few different NASCAR races as well. But yeah, the Vikings were the bread and butter. 1998, they went like 15-1. That was Randy Moss's rookie year. And so, that was like a sensation. People were, all over to get to those games and loving to go to places like Chicago and Detroit, go to those away games and have travel experiences around it. So it was a lot of fun.
I was such a Kirby Puckett fan. Like, Kirby was just such a cool player, man.
He absolutely was.
Was it not the 91 World Series where he made the catch? I think, maybe somewhere around in there. And against the wall, and it's like goes down in like baseball history. Definitely is one of the best catches. Anyway, I'm if we start talking sports, we'll turn it into a whole nother podcast. So sorry.
Totally. Listen, I was, those are my junior high and high school years. 87 when they won the first one in 91. I was at both of those World Series.
Oh, that's
I was
awesome.
lucky at the time. My dad's radio station was an affiliate partner, so he got access to tickets. So yeah, I have the most amazing memories, and Kirby Puckett is definitely on the Mount Rushmore of Minnesota athletes for sure.
Very cool. I'm sorry, I got us way off track there. So
I love it. First podcast interview I've ever talked about Kirby Puckett with. So this is great, Shannon. I like it.
All right, I definitely will. I'll wear the crown proudly. I promise. So. That's what kind of led you into doing all of this. Where do you kind of focus now? Where does your industry or what you do? Do you have it's just open to multiple industries? It can help. How can it help the shed industry?
Yeah, so it definitely is open to multiple industries. Just to, I guess, cover my list, I took us all the way up to maybe 7 years ago. That's when I made the transformation from agency and building websites and digital marketing campaigns and SEO for everyone else. And then a couple of my industry colleagues / friends had built a product around customer feedback and online reviews. And I made the switch from working on tons of different products to just working on one product and helping build that tool. And we grew that tool to working with about 25,000 businesses globally, helping them after a purchase send an email or send a text message and say, how did we do? Gather that feedback and ask them if they'd write a review on Google or TripAdvisor, Facebook, wherever they wanted people to share their experience about that business. And we grew that, and we're lucky enough to grow it enough to a point where that was acquired by another company in 2019. And that led me to looking at, what do I want to do next? And what I'm doing right now with Leadferno and business text messaging is what I wanted to do next. And it really grew off of two core ideas that I'd had for a long time. One was in building hundreds of websites over time. I always dreamed of kind of this call to action or conversion opportunity in a box to deploy on a website. You build a website, you have to build a contact form and put your phone number on it and do all these different things. And I just looked at like, okay, this really seems kind of old school forever, that the contact page is like your one opportunity to turn someone from just a lurker on your website to an actual lead. And so I wanted to introduce something like, how do you make every page, no matter where they're at, there's always a button for them to take a next step to become someone known to you by signing up for your email list, calling to ask questions, sending a text message to ask questions, filling out that form if that's the route they're comfortable going. So that was definitely part of it. And the second was in trying to pay attention to trends and where things were going. I just continually had this feeling and watching even in my past business, how we were asking for reviews and feedback via email. And then businesses were like, we want to do this over text. We're starting to text with our customers a little bit. And so I really felt like, man, just texting has taken over. So many of us don't even send emails to friends, family, anything else anymore. It's just all text. We have them all in a group text. We have our singular text. It's how we, interact with just our interests, organizations, everything else. And so I wanted to build something around that as well. So that's what led to Leadferno. And when you ask about industries, we work across a really wide variety. And that's because, as I touched on before, and just to probably go a little bit further on that, the whole precipice is ease. And so I always tell people, if by answering a handful of questions easily for your prospect, you can turn them into hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of sales, this is likely a tool that you want to test out.
Yeah.
Because I just looked at it, and I looked at my own life, and in businesses I could interact with or ask questions or schedule an appointment or get a reminder or clarify something over text messaging. I enjoyed working with those businesses because I didn't have to make a phone call and maybe get voicemail and play voicemail tag, or get a phone tree and know I had to press 1 and then 4 and then 8 and go around that. How many times have we filled out a form on a website and we have no idea when they're going to get back to us, or they maybe never get back to us because the business doesn't even know the form's broken, or they're busy with other things and checking email is one of the last things that they do. So all of those things led me to text and lead me to the point that it really is focused on the core of how easy is it to work with you. And text messaging has emerged as probably the lowest barrier of entry for someone to ask questions or find out more about something that's out there. And then we took it a step further by making it, how do we start a text conversation right from the website? So they're looking at photos, they're reading information, they might read case studies, whatever that might be. But oftentimes we find consumers still have maybe 1 or 2 lingering questions. That's what takes, answering those to get them over the finish line. And if you make it really easy for them to do that, then they're like, great, what's the next step? How do I make an appointment? Can I come see you? Can I come take a look at it? Whatever that might be in whatever industry. But, you put a lot on your website or your social media if you think it's going to answer every question. And so I just look at, why not give them the easiest way to connect with you on their own time? Because text messaging is asynchronous. You send a text. When they answer it, they lob it back across to you. You get a notification. A phone call, you have to decide at that moment, am I going to take this call? Do I have time to take this call? Is it too noisy here? Am I going to interrupt the person I'm interacting with or hanging out with? Where we all see it, we all do it. We just text on our own time, or we'll be talking to someone and quickly, oh, hang on, just got to fire this text back, something like that. So I just arrived as man, this is just so much easier for someone to work with someone by enabling messaging as one of the options, not the only way, but as one of the options.
It's a very good point. I talk a lot about communication, and in my off time, I might occasionally talk about how I believe that communication is the thing that troubles the human experience the most. I mean, if we could effectively communicate, and that's a hard thing to do. I mean, I think of so many different cliches that are cliches for a reason, and puns and advice that people's given me. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen. Better to be quiet and thought a fool than open your mouth. Remove all doubt. When you're a podcaster, you talk a lot. I mean, and that's kind of the thing that kind of got me into podcasting anyways, because I seem to talk a lot. And I told people I spent the first half of my life listening. I'm going to spend the second half of my life talking. So I've got a lot to say from listening from so much. But honestly, communication as a means of being effective in sales even is incredibly important. And there are a lot of things that you're trying to look for, including inflection in the voice, body language. I mean, a lot of things give me cues and tell me things that sometimes texting or literal text doesn't tell me. How do you overcome those barriers? Right now, trying to read a text message, from a sales perspective and really even just a friend perspective. I've got a buddy who says, if you're not sure how your tone is, throw a good old LOL on the end of it. And that'll always disarm somebody from worrying about how the tone of your text is coming across. Just curious at your thoughts on some of those things.
Yeah. Well, one, I mean, great observation and a great thing to touch on. I personally just look at that in sending text messages with my wife. I need to be careful to like make sure my tone is known so I'm not coming across the wrong way and creating a problem for myself. Right. And two, you know, your intro to that, Shannon, where you started, I feel like I had a little bit of a cheat code in this because in working with all those businesses and reviews, right? Like one way or another, I had exposure to millions of reviews and we did a lot of reports and research and analyzed that. And what stood out to me, communication was a massive part of 1-star review horrible experiences and a massive part of 5-star review exceptional experiences. So you're exactly right, because communication is where you set expectations and make sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed and all those things. And when it goes afoul, you've angered someone so much that they want to tell everybody not to use your business. And when you've done it right, you've converted them into a brand advocate that you can be sitting there talking to them at a picnic and they'll say, you want to know this great thing I just bought or the experience I had or what the company did? And like, you didn't even ask them. They're just now an advocate telling you about that brand. So communication, so important. And then to get to your question, I just really tell people to, you know, think about that voice that they're using when they are texting and include those subtleties, because text is still a very personalized, and some of your texts might be very factual, where you're just communicating, here's our hours, or here's our location, or here's what you need to know. Here's a link to look into that more, or here's a photo so you can see what I'm talking about. So some of those are straightforward, but the other things, you just want to think about those small nuances and think in your head, like, how am I coming across? And that's where you can see like small things like emojis being helpful, or how you're using, you know, adjectives and verbs and things like that to be able to put in front of people so that you keep, you know, texting is nice because it's usually short and to the point and not a fluff. But make sure you're doing right things like greeting and just letting them know you're here to be helpful and what else can I answer for you and happy to help, right? There's just a lot of small things where it's like, if I just over communicate a little bit with some emotion, words that represent that and personalize it, you'll definitely win and not cause confusion with that customer with like, are they annoyed with me right now? Or whatever else. So those are some of the small things that I tell people. And a lot of times, you know, we might work with a customer and if they ask about that, I'm like, well, let's look at some of your communication together. Pull up your account. Let's look at these things. And let me give you some tips where by adding a few more words or adding something small, a thumbs up emoji or a smiley face, like you would have made it no doubt that you were happy to answer that or happy to help.
I almost have to, we must be in sync, because as you were saying the words out loud in my head, I was saying emojis help. Because they do. And for me, I do want to set the tone for that. I have a tendency to want to develop a thought completely. And how many times do you do this? Too much to text, needed to call you. Too much to text. And that tells me that, I mean, that's the purpose of SMS, right? Short messaging service, or it's I don't remember. Like, that's the purpose, is to throw out I need a yes or no here, or I need, you know, I just need the basic information. And that's really the key to sales. A lot of people will tell you that asking questions is because you're trying to uncover, as you're trying to sell, you're trying to uncover how you can solve the need or the concern that they have. So no matter what they're buying. So if it's a shed, you're trying to ask questions to get to, what do you want to use this for? How can I help you? What size do you need? What style are you looking for? You can't get all of that in one question. So you have to continue to ask them. And I can see where messaging. So I've experienced this even myself in selling on Facebook. We have in the industry, there's a couple of online sales platforms that are specific to just sheds. But even in texting, but this idea is new to me. I've never texted through a website. So kind of take me through that a little bit, or shine on your product a little bit. explain to the customers how that'll help you if you have a website and beyond.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Shannon, you do such a great job of pointing out things that I think are critical. So first, I get to touch on exactly what you said with your texting comment there. I tell people all the time, when you're doing texting, it doesn't mean you're only doing texting. So texting might make asking a few questions easy, and then you're like, great, come on in, or can we jump on a phone call, or can I send you an email that summarizes all this with photos? So the number one job of our product at the end of the day is to make starting a conversation easy. However you want to handle it after that, some people we see rely on text for a lot of it. Others, the minute they get those first couple of questions or their first question, they're like, yes, they answer it or no. And then they say, can I call you to tell you a little bit more about this, or to maybe ask a few more questions, because there's a lot to this.
Yes.
So yes, at the end of the day, the business can decide this is a tool, and they decide how they want to put that tool to work. We find it works exceptionally well at starting conversations. It's up for the business and their process and their people to decide how well does it facilitate it all the way through the process. And as we go along, we can talk about, things in the shed industry where that would be beneficial. Oh boy, you're going to have to cue me your question again, because I talked too long on that one.
That's fine. So my thought is, how do you walk someone through the process of coming from the website mainly?
Yes, great. So we have a feature in our tool that we call the lead box. And what it basically does is you embed a line of code into the website, and it places two small floating buttons at the bottom of the screen. And so these buttons, no matter if you're on a mobile smartphone or you're on a desktop computer, laptop, iPad, whatever, these are always floating and visible at the bottom of the screen. And you're able to edit or kind of put those together to read however you want. So it could say, have questions? Text us. Want to see a shed? Text us. Book appointment? Text us. So you're finding some combination of like what is going to be intriguing or part of that discovery or sales process for the customer, and then letting them know that texting is an option with that. Because not all customers, like you want to market that you make it so easy that you can text them. Once they click those little buttons, then it opens a larger window. And people are probably familiar with this with like live chats and things like that. But what's a little different with ours is, yes, they can open it and it can just say, great, what's your name and your number and your message? And then we start a text conversation from there. But what you can also do is place your other call to actions on there. So it could be your phone number to call you. It could be text us. It could be email us. It could be a link to a contact form or a request more info form that you already have on there. So we look at it like we've placed these buttons on the site that are always visible. Let's make the top conversion points where the customer goes from just being anonymous on the website to saying, here's who I am and here's what I need. Whatever those top ones are, it can be joining an email list, or we send out a monthly email of our inventory, or something educational. We put all that in front of them. So that way they can choose what they want to do. How do they want to lob the ball across to you, or start engaging with either your team or some of your marketing messaging. So once they do that, and now let's just take the path of texting. They fill out, here's my name, my number, and they fill out what their question is or their comment or what they're looking to accomplish. Our system immediately sends them an automatic reply message to their phone, to their messaging app that they use on a daily basis. And from there, now the conversation for the consumer is all inside of that app. So the consumer doesn't have to download a special app. They don't need anything from us. All they're doing is a quick small form, and then our system's starting to interact with them. We have two different auto reply types. One's during hours and one's after hours. So this is all about first just letting them know, like, yep, we got your question. Within seconds, they have a text message from you. They know the number you're texting from. Let's say it's during business hours, and maybe your auto reply is like, hey, thanks for reaching out to Aaron's Sheds. We're with customers right now, but we're going to get back to you within the hour or within 2 hours, whatever you want to frame up as that expectation. Say they're browsing at 11 at night and you're going to be nowhere near answering that text. Then it might read, hey, thanks for contacting Aaron's Sheds. We're not open right now, but we'll contact you tomorrow morning when we open at 8. Our system automatically, you plug in your hours, so it'll automatically pull the next available time for you. And there's a lot of other variables that you can do with those auto replies, but it's such a great instant gratification, and you're instantly on their phone and establishing a line of connection and setting an expectation with them.
I can't remember where I read about like automation and the importance of automation and how many sales you lose just from not having an automatic reply, even if it's not a live person. It's someone saying, okay, you set an expectation that said, someone will get back to me within the hour. And if they are busy, they can go and track those leads through whatever CRM or whatever they're using. But the idea is that someone will get back to them. A lot of people sell on Facebook in this industry, but they tell me about the concerns and frustrations about, and some enjoy it, but some don't. The messages at 3:00 in the morning, because that's when the customer is wanting to know the information, which is probably ridiculous for most of us listening. But that's real life now. They work midnights and, they're on lunch and they're like, hey, I'm going to message this, maybe not even expecting a reply, and they get one. And then it's, hey, we're not open right now, but I'll, message you first thing in the morning, or we'll reach out first thing in the morning. Automation, I can't say enough for. If you can do it effectively, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at it, we're big believers in light automation like that. And I can touch on some other features as we go along too. But at the end of the day, we do want to connect that consumer with someone on the team that can help them. But just as you pointed out, when you're able to do it in moment and give them immediate gratification and solve when will I even get this back? Are they going to call me? Are they going to do this? Whatever else. You've already established that, and you're telling them, here's when we're going to get back to you, so that they have an expectation, which is perfect. Now for the business, what they get is they're going to get, depending upon how they're using our product. So we have both a desktop app, so you can just log in through a web browser. I like that because then I have a full keyboard to type text messages back from, instead of, I'm a thumb texter instead of just my thumbs. I know other people incorporate certain fingers into things and whatever else.
I can't do that. I'm a thumb texter too, and I'm slow at it on top of that. Matter of fact, I might be an index finger sometimes. Texter.
Yeah, totally. All I know is I've definitely been made fun of by I have 4 kids, 3 of them are teenagers, and I think they've pointed out some of my, smartphone usage techniques. Sometimes it's apparently not up to snuff. Even though I've worked in tech a long time.
Nothing like being in tech and getting corrected by your teenagers.
Absolutely. So for the business, they can check it via their web browser or via their smartphone. We have an app for the smartphone as well. And then there's different things you can choose for notifications. You can either get, push notifications on your phone the same way when you get a new text message, or as you'll see within many of your other apps, it'll tell you have a new lead and here's what it is, or you have a reply, here's what it is. If you're only using the desktop, that has a desktop alert on your computer, but you can also set it to text your phone. So it just sends you a text and says you have a new lead in Leadferno. You're going to want to check that. So it makes it really easy for the business to know when they have new leads or they have something going on. And that allows them to go into the shared inbox that we've built to take a look at what's that customer's need, where do they come in from. The beauty, right? Say you're, a shed dealer and you have a bunch of different models on your site. When that message comes in, we'll actually tell you the URL on your site that they were on when they came in. So if they're looking at a specific model of a shed or a specific piece of inventory, you'll know if they had a question like, can I get this with this siding option or with this roofing option? You're going to know exactly what one that they're talking about, unless they completely jumped off that one into another one and then asked their question. So you even get some context with it when it's delivered.
Very nice. Very nice. You can offer both SMS and MMS multimedia. What's the relevance there? What's the importance really to, being able to add pictures and things like that, especially when you're selling a product?
Yes. No, I mean, just think of it, right? Somebody calls in and has questions, maybe on a specific detail, a construction process item, framing, window type, anything like that, like you can just go and take a couple of real quick photos and text them right back to them on it. Or consider, if they're asking questions, you're like, yeah, I have one on the lot. And then you're taking 2 or 3 pictures and sending it to them to try to entice them to come onto the lot with what's there. Or you have, right, consider, I would guess in the shed industry, a lot of people might have questions on the delivery and the setup and like, what do I need for a pad or site prep, things like that. You might already have a catalog of photos on your computer or something like that. Where like, here's a cup, answer me a few questions. Now, like these would probably be my suggestions. And here's photos of these, like pre-delivery, how we deliver it, how it needs to set down, things like that with it. So, seeing is believing. So anytime that you can give people visuals instead of just words with it, like it's going to up their trust to a very high level, make them very comfortable, and it's just going to push them further down your sales process. So SMS is just strictly text-based content, characters. MMS allows you to send photos and videos and things like that. And that stuff's only going to continue to expand, right? Without, and I'm not even an expert here, but when you think about it, texting is really only on like version 1.5. It hasn't really changed that much.
Right.
The changes are inside of like Apple uses iMessaging, and there's features inside of that where you can do tap backs to love a text or to like it, haha, things like that.
Yep.
And then Android has its own. So I think at some point we'll hit like this version 2.0 of texting where it'll be an even richer experience that might not be so platform specific. But we'll see how that comes out. So texting still is a long way to go in its features. I know like one of Apple's next rollouts when they update is you'll be able to edit text, which is kind of crazy. That'll only be right when you're texting Apple to Apple products, but you'll be able to, those typos we all have, or it inserts the wrong word or whatever else, you'll be able to correct those so that they're just not there forever. You got to get to it fast before they screenshot it and share it and embarrass you. But
yeah, autocorrect is everybody's friend, I'm sure. And for the grammar police, that's really important. But the reality of it all is, I message with my family, I message with coworkers, I message with customers. I mean, I even remember texting whenever I had a flip phone, and it was just this really cool, neat thing where you had to push 4 buttons to get to the T and push 3 buttons to get to the H, and we thought, wow, this is really cool and new technology. So when you talk, that was, I guess, version 1.0. We've made it to the 1.5 now where we can add emojis, like you said, and all that.
Yep.
And you can say something with a picture. It's becoming the social construct is saying, I understand what that picture means. Just a mind blown emoji. I sent that the other day. How did that go? Mind blown emoji. But then it prompted a question. Well, good or bad? And that was the question. And it was like, oh, good. And then I had to elaborate on that. That form of communication is, it's still really amazing that we have that opportunity, really. If we'd have had that when I was a kid, wow. But landlines, what can you do with landlines? That's still a relevant part of our world.
Yeah, great question. So what we're usually able to do is something that's called porting, and we're able to allow messaging to be hosted on your existing landline. So everything stays the same, the voice carrier you're using, system, billing, all that stuff. We do a lookup to understand, because most of these landlines have now been enabled to handle data as well and messaging as well. And then we can just hook into that number and have that available so that your text messages are coming from your own number. So there's a number of benefits to that, but just to quickly touch on, when you create an account with us, we automatically provision and create an 800 number for you to text from. So within seconds of signing up, you can start sending texts. And for a lot of businesses, that works just fine. They might already be running their business, if it's newer, off their cell phone anyway, so they don't want to text. They're trying to get away from using that number for texting because it only ties into one person and you can't transfer it. A bunch of different things that we have features to help you do. But for business that's been around 10, 15, 20 years, I'm kind of, again, when we look at trends and predict, I feel like in the next 5 years, if we see a phone number on a billboard, on a service truck, anything else, we will automatically assume that we can text or call that number. So when you have just one number, when you've ported that number, now you can do that advertising. I just wrote an article a couple weeks ago about it and shared photos of, right, plumbers or HVAC contractors, florists that the side of their vans say, call or text us for service at this number. Call or text to order flowers at this number. I even see ones, in today's day and age where in certain industries, hiring is extremely difficult. They're like, call or text us for career opportunities. And that's on the back of their truck as they're out driving around in a moving billboard all day. So yeah, choosing that porting option, especially for a long-standing business, because to me, the beauty is if you can create that and you're in their phone contacts and they have your name and your logo in there and they know they can call or text you and you're living and residing in their phone, like that's such a beautiful thing. And especially if you need to reach back out to them, because as we all know, right, like, I don't know, a third to half the phone calls I get are spam calls or, not something I need to talk to. It's not the auto warranty that I need to buy or anything else. So when you text somebody or when they call and your business name comes up, you're a trusted vendor. They're someone that they know, and that just makes the communication process all the easier with them. So yeah, we see all types. Probably a majority use those 800 numbers that we provision for them, but yeah, 9 times out of 10, we can enable your existing landline without you having to do anything or disrupt anything and make it so that text messages are coming from that same number you've been taking calls at for 5, 10, 20 years.
And great information, extremely helpful. I'm going to change a course here. We'll come back to it, but just a question I thought of earlier. I didn't get a chance to ask you. Leadferno, the name, where did that come from? What was the ideal on that?
So here's one thing in being like a long-time online entrepreneur. You never ever start a business where you can't buy the .com name of it. And as we've seen with so many businesses, that leads to misspellings and quirky and merging of words like we did and whatever else. And I really wanted something that spoke to, right, where even though we enable communication across the entire customer experience and even after the experience, I wanted our focus to be on that front end, on the lead side. Like, but we want to build tools that make it easy to start a relationship, because that is what's so valuable to businesses is the start of a relationship. To land a new customer is the most costly, the most difficult. Mm-hmm. You invest a lot. So I wanted to have lead in there. And then I just started doing a lot of different considerations. And then I started thinking like, oh, well, if leads were coming in super hot, like that would be an inferno. And then shortened it to just Leadferno to cut out so many syllables and more letters, and leadferno.com was available, and I just shared it with a few people and they're like, I love it. And we're like, all right, well, we're off to the races.
It's so catchy. It caught my attention right away. So from a marketing perspective, really good job. And really having the name Lead in there, that's exactly what you touched on is so important in the shed industry. That's what you're trying to do with everything that you're doing. As you, we have conversations on some of these private Facebook groups or just different groups, just community information that gets shared throughout the industry. That's a really important thing whenever it comes to leads. You're trying to, from every little thing you do, the way you display your lot, what you put on your lot, how you manage it, how clean it looks, where you're marketing, are you in the chamber? Is the chamber worth it? My local community, all these different conversations are traffic counts. What's the traffic count look like? Which so many people will tell you. I know, especially in the car industry, I've got several friends who sell cars, and I remember one in particular, we were talking about location, and he said, location just doesn't matter now. I can reach so many customers that I don't have to pay a premium because I can reach so many customers without having to have that brick and mortar location that's front and center everywhere. Yeah. So many people are shopping in different ways, even like your website. I took this off your website. It says communications evolving fast, and over 78% of consumers want to text with your business. I mean, I text now. I think it's just incredibly important. And to be able to do that from the website, that's amazing. Outside of the website, what other services? Just what do you offer? What would you tell the shed industry if you had folks listening who said, I want to find out how to get more leads. Explain to me how texting does it. And then I got one more question I definitely want to ask you before we get out of here. But I just want you to shine on your business, man, and talk about how it's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've touched a bunch on like the lead side and being easy to work with and ask questions. But some of the other things that are built into our tool are around that like communication of the customer life cycle. So being able to interact back and forth and set them a time that they're, I'm going to come in Saturday at noon. So then we have a feature of scheduled messages. So you can actually, right when you're talking to them, it might be on a Wednesday. You can write a message and that, looking forward to meeting you today, John. You're scheduled to be here at noon. And you might schedule to send that Saturday 1 hour or 2 hours ahead of that appointment time that they were coming on. So you can, while you're talking to that customer or right when you finished, you can write a message and then schedule it to send anytime in the future for them. This can also come in super handy on like delivery day and things like that, or pickup day if they're picking it up on site, where you can give them reminders on that, maybe what to bring, what to have prepared, what to expect, any of those types of things. So the business can write these messages and create them in the moment while they're focused on working. And then they can ask those to be sent at, 8 a.m. on that Saturday or 5 p.m. on that Monday night. And they didn't have to think about it for the last 1 week, 2 weeks, anything else. So in that interaction, definitely extremely helpful. Sending them a text, like if you are doing delivery and be like, hey, we just left the lot and we're going to see you in 20 minutes. Yeah. So we're going to be there. Right. And like, that's just making it easy for the customer. And then when you get to the point after, right, like, say you deliver it, you put it down, you walk through everything else, you send a text a day later and be like, hey, it's, you've had it for 24 hours. Hopefully you're already, feeling it and using it and loving it. Do you want to share feedback about your experience? Is there anything else we didn't answer? Find out how it went. And if they're like, no, great, loved it, then you can follow up with a text and be like, would you mind sharing that with others? Would you write us a review, post about it on Facebook, leave a review on Google, right? You can figure out whatever ways are helpful to your business. So along those lines, we have all these different kind of features built in to help do those things. So another feature we have is called shortcuts. You can basically build a library of like saved replies, answers, links, questions, and then you can just bring those up in a couple of taps or in like a keyword shortcut. So instead of typing out 200 characters for, a couple of questions that are always starter questions on someone looking for a shed, you can already have that pre-written out and just call it up in a couple of taps off your phone or a couple of clicks off your computer. And now you're just saving yourself time and energy to type those out. And then you get into, the different things where maybe you have, different experts on your staff or certain people that handle certain things, or based on just the time that they're working, where one employee is handling the communication and they need to hand it off to another. And if you're just using your own phones, texting people or whatever else, like you have to hand them the phone that you're already texting them, or you have to send them the number. Then that person gets a text from a new number that they haven't interacted with at all. Just creates a lot of problems. With our system, you can just transfer that conversation and then it'll appear in their inbox. So if you have someone that specializes in some, or maybe only one person does financing, if you offer that, whatever that might look like, you're able to move those conversations through multiple people without disrupting anything for the customer. They're still interacting with the same number from the same business. And you just announce like, yeah, I'm going to transfer you to Sharon. And then Sharon picks up like, hey, this is Sharon. Mark gave me the notes and now I'm going to help you with these things. So a number of features like that just to build efficiency and communication and process inside the business. And then the next thing I would touch on is reporting. So you can understand what pages on your website are giving you these leads. How many of them are you winning or losing? What do those look like? So we give you detailed reporting on what's taking place with all the leads. And then I touched on really early, not only, we bring SMS and powering text messaging to it, but you can integrate or sync and connect your Facebook Messenger account, your Google Business Messages account. So now instead of having to man multiple messaging tools that are popular and can be used, you can manage it all from ours, and you can use all of our features. So if somebody sends you a Facebook message at 2 a.m, it will auto reply with that same, we're closed right now, but we're going to get back to you at 8 a.m. So a lot of efficiency in bringing that all together in one shared uniform place, allowing you to see all your contacts, see all your conversations, move them between employees, and all kinds of efficiencies to keep you typing less, moving the conversation forward. Reaction times are so much faster. One stat I always find marveling, the average reply to a text is 90 seconds. The average reply to an email is 90 minutes. So
wow. I'm writing that down.
Yeah, 60 times faster in communication. And I say this not to put pressure on the business. Man, we've done a bunch of research, and it's not to say business, you need to respond that fast. The faster you respond, the better. We all know speed to lead is something that definitely helps. But when your customer's responding to you faster, that is cutting out so much time, because people have their phone and that app on all the time, where we're not going into our email every 10 seconds like, oh, are they back to me? Are they getting back to me yet? Like, that's just not the nature of it. So,
well, especially when you don't think about like the social, like social dilemma and all the things they brought to, the things they were talking about with, and there's a concerted effort. I mean, to try and like limit. I tell my kids all the time, you got to limit your amount of texting. I used to watch how much text came in. It was free. Don't get me wrong. It was unlimited, but I would still watch how many texts came in like a month. And I would show them at the end of the month, look at how much you text, look at how much your brother did, look at how much I did, look at how much your mom did. And then look at the phone time that was spent. For me, the primary means of communication is talking. So like my phone calls, one against everybody. My son might log 3 minutes on the phone an entire month. And then like my daughters would be really low too, but the texting would be like 3 times as much as anybody else. We really went through those details. In this industry, I know that there's been a lot of conversation about even some of the folks that lead in social media conversations. They just become personalities that are known even outside of the industry. They talk about, the importance of silencing people's ability to contact you, to reach you, that you don't want to feel pressured to respond immediately. Which is fair. Nothing wrong with that. I agree with that. I agree with the limitations that I should allow myself and how my family would look at Facebook and not just Facebook, other social media platforms. I mean, it's that one gets the most attention, but especially in this industry because of the whole business suite and the ability to sell on marketplace and private Facebook groups. Yeah. How do you, that's still important. The fact that you should, I like, what did you say? Speed to lead.
Speed to lead. Yep.
Yeah. I
like lead.
That because it is important. Here's what happens. We've talked about this even on websites. If somebody is driving down the road, typically brand recognition in the shed industry is not terribly as important or as thoughtful as it's not as relevant as people might think. Typically one shed manufacturer looks very similar to another shed manufacturer, but if they're driving down the road and they see one, they might go home and start to do some Google research or something like that or they'll at least look for them. They'll look for an online, a directory of some kind or whatever, and try to find out who those people are. And the competition who's not on might not have a website. You might have just paid for your competitor to sell a shed. I can see with texting it being the same thing. If you can speed to lead, if you can get to them the quickest, you're going to have the best conversion rate. And that goes back to the first mover's advantage. So
and the jump back here to what we talked about earlier with like the auto reply feature, this is where that becomes so important, because if they reach out to you, they send that text, they send a Facebook message, and they get an auto reply with you, and you set an expectation, more than likely they're going to sit tight during that expectation because they have something in motion. It's when they don't have something or they don't have an expectation, they're going to continue on their quest to reach out, to talk to someone else, and everything. So that's the beauty there, where it's like within seconds you have a touch point and you can set an expectation, and then it's on you to beat that expectation or to make that happen. But I really think from all of my experience and watching consumer behavior and watching leads across so many industries, and what happens where people fail is when there's nothing established, or they fail to meet what they said they were going to do.
Yes.
People are too busy to want to say, I'm just going to blast out 5 inquiries right now and see who comes to me first. It's a process. They go to somebody, and if they understand enough that they're going to, somebody's going to get back to them, they're going to get an answer, whatever that looks like, they've touched base, then they're at least locked into a little bit of something. And it isn't until you fail them or you don't deliver them what they need that they start to go outside that.
Yep.
So again, if you're like, if answering voicemails or emails is hard, and it's a day later, 2 days later, whatever else, then yeah, they probably shifted if you didn't give any touch base and you didn't give a tight enough time frame to get back to them. And they're like, well, yeah, then I started going to look at this, or this caught my eye, or I'm excited about it and I'm interested in it, and the internet's got everything I want at my fingers, so I just kept going with it. So I think that's really important for people to realize, in that is like, when you establish that connection and you give them an acceptable time to connect with them, they're going to proceed with you instead of going down other lines of inquiry.
Man, all of this is very cool. I absolutely love everything about it. Love your energy. Love, we might have to do like a round 2 or something at some point. It was an easy podcast, I can promise you. Believe it or not, almost an hour went by already, and it seems like it happens so fast. Great conversationalist. I would love for you to stay on here even after we quit recording, just if I can chat with you for a second. I had a couple questions I wanted to ask you. If somebody in the shed industry is out there listening right now and they say, hey, this guy sounds pretty cool, which he is, and they want to find out more about his company, what do they need to do to get a demo and find out more about what you do?
Absolutely. So go to leadferno.com, and you'll notice in the lower right, that's those buttons I was talking about. You'll see on ours, you can text us or book a demo. Once you open that, if you want to click book a demo, we do just a half-hour one-to-one demo where we show you how the product works and the features and can answer your questions. So simple enough to do that over a Zoom call. If you have questions, you can click the text button and you can just start asking questions, and myself or someone else on our team be happy to answer them. And then our product has a 14-day free trial. So you sign up, you can get it set up. If you need help getting it set up, we'll help you set it up during the free trial. It's really, most people are up and running in like 10 minutes. It's a pretty easy, straightforward process. And we make sure you're up and running and use that 2-week free trial. And we're very confident we'll win you over, and we'll see how it's a great fit for you, and you'll turn into a paying customer. And we're there to help you, support you. We write a lot of educational content to understand how it all works. So we want to be there for the long haul. We want a very long-term relationship. I'm sure no different than the shed industry, where it's like, once you buy one, you're more than likely to need another, a bigger one. So let's just keep going from there.
Well, that's the hope, as long as we continue to have excess. We're selling space, so
Yep.
As long as we're doing good. Most people, I mean, we've been around so many people who said this before time and time again. Most people are unaware of like exactly what the shed industry does. They have questions. I can see that text messaging. You hit on it earlier, talking about, well, how's this going to get delivered? How does that work? They might not know the process, and you can easily convert the sale, I think, better by just answering those questions. And oftentimes I know that's what's cost me a lead. I suspect it's costing others, is just converting that lead by that black swan. Chris Voss talks about it in his book, that black swan you didn't know to ask, the question you didn't know to ask, stop you from getting a sale. And sometimes that little quick text message could say, oh, well, we'll just deliver it. Oh, well, it's just 4 to 6 days or 8 to 10 days. Oh, I didn't realize that, or, oh, build one brand new. It's 3 to 4 weeks and we'll get it out there to you. So, this was,
well, as you kind of pointed out, Shannon, like the end product, the differentiation in the end product, that is becoming a smaller and smaller margin, right? Like that's much harder to compete on. but absolutely every brand can compete on customer experience and process and all of those things. And so getting someone into a conversation where you can answer the specific details on the materials used, how it was built, timing, that's all great. But when you're able to speak to them and let them know how you take care of them, what your warranties might be, what your build process, delivery process, any of those things are, like, that's how you differentiate yourself to where they're like, yeah, this is obviously who I want to use. Like, these guys are so on top of their stuff. So
very
spot
good.
on.
Well, I'll quit recording here, but if you don't care, I'll stay on. I just had a few questions I wanted to ask you, if that's okay. And man, I just appreciate you so much being on the podcast today.
I had a great time, Shannon. You guys are in a great industry. You do a great job, and I love just being able to talk about what I'm passionate about. So thanks for the opportunity.
I appreciate that.